Three, two, one, liftoff.
Cannabinoid Connect, the nation's most diverse cannabis-related podcast.
All right, looks like we're recording. Darren, it's good to see you. Welcome to the podcast.
And I'm psyched to be here. Let's get started with this.
We're gonna have a good conversation today, and I'm excited because we're gonna really peel back the onion here. We've talked many times on Cannabinoid Connect about the hindrance that 280E puts these operators in terms of the tax burden and just there's so many hurdles to jump through to be successful in this industry. And it seems like you've found somewhat of a kind of silver bullet. So what I'd like to talk first about is just let's for this conversation, let's lay the foundation with what an employee stock ownership plan is. And then
it already sounds confusing.
And
it's
then
already confusing, right?
I know. So that's why we got to dive into it. And then we'll talk about the impacts in cannabis and so on. So let's just start there. Yeah.
Biggest problem with this thing, the ESOP, employee stock ownership plan, it's his name, and you look and you start Googling it, and you go to the IRS website, and you go, 15 seconds in, and your eyes glaze over, and you're like, I don't know what this is. It sounds like a pension plan. It's not a pension plan. All right. An ESOP is just another way to sell your company. That's it. It's just a way to sell your company, right? You could sell your company to a private equity firm. You could sell your company to a strategic buyer, like a large MSO, or you can sell to your employees via this structure called an ESOP. That's it. That's what an ESOP is, a way to sell your company. Now, why would you sell your company to your employees? They don't have any money, right? Well, private equity seems like they have tons of money, right? And strategic buyers, why would you sell to your employees?
And M&A activity is huge in cannabis right now, right? I mean, the end goal is being acquired. The
end goal is that acquisition, that exit opportunity. Right now, it's very difficult to have that exit, and there's no money. There's no private equity firms in the space to actually go out and acquire companies. And that's because with federal legalization issues, you have the whole know your customer and what do you call that? Whatever. Right now, it's still illegal. So a lot of these limited partners can't get into this space. In terms of the large MSOs, there's some M&A activity going on. They'll buy larger firms. And when they buy these larger firms, they're not giving them any cash. They're giving very little cash. It's mostly stock, right? So again, where does this ESOP sell to the employees come in? Well, why should you do it? The government gives you a lot of incentives. It gives you a lot of incentives to do it. One of the incentives, which is a really cool incentive, is that if you sell 100% of your company to the employees via this structure, if you sell 100%, the company pays zero federal tax and zero state tax forever. And when you're paying zero income tax, it does not matter that you can't take deductions. So 280E becomes irrelevant.
Let's say that again for the people listening. So if you sell 100% of your company through an ESOP, you are tax exempt. 280E becomes irrelevant at this point.
Yes, and I'd like to say that 1,000 times, because ESOPs, right? They're not boring. This is the most non-boring thing in the entire industry because you get to not pay any tax, which means that you can double or triple your cash flow right away as soon as you sell to the ESOP. It's pretty phenomenal.
Right? It's very phenomenal. And I'm going to ask the follow-up obvious question, which is, okay, do operators know about this? Is this why you're out here with the megaphone going, guys, look over here? I mean, is it just we don't know what we don't know in this industry right now in terms of ESOPs?
You don't know what you don't know. And this is the biggest gift to the cannabis industry. And it's taken me years. Like, you didn't know about it, until like a couple of days ago.
Right.
So about 3 years ago, someone comes to me and they were learning about ESOPs and they were in the cannabis space, and they start learning about it. And they're like, there's this thing called 280E, and they explain it to me. And then they say, and we both at the same time, like, it doesn't matter. 280E becomes irrelevant. And it was like, wow, and no one knows this. No one has a clue. And the thing is with ESOPs, again, like I said, if you look at it right now, when you go Googling ESOPs, you're not going to know what it is because it's so complex. What I do is I dilute it down. And in my own mind, I can dilute it down. So when I found out about this, I was like, oh my goodness, this is the biggest thing since sliced bread. And I went out and started telling the world. What I started doing is going to every single attorney in the cannabis space that I can find. I would try to get the meetings. I would go to every single accounting firm that I can get to and try to get meetings. And I was able to get a lot of meetings. And it took a long time, and people didn't believe it. Like these are cannabis attorneys that they just didn't believe it. So finally, I get a meeting with this guy. His name is Eric Berlin. And Eric Berlin is the head of cannabis for a law firm called Denton's Law Firm. Now, Denton's is the largest law firm in the world, and they have one of the largest cannabis practices in the United States. They are a big behemoth. So I sit down, I explain it to Eric, and Eric, he kind of believes it. He's like, there's a lot of fishy things going on this, but I hear what you're saying, and I go through, I explain why it works. He's like, well, let me look into it. I proceed to have with Eric and dozens of attorneys over the next 6 months, many, many meetings until finally, and this is about spring of 2023 or winter 2020. No, it was like spring 2023. He calls me and he's like, you did it. This completely works. I can't believe we didn't know about this. We're going to give you a client and we're going to write an opinion letter on it. And with the opinion letter is going to be a should level opinion letter. Should level means it became a should level. Should level is the highest level opinion letter that a law firm can get. So having the largest law firm in the world writing this should level opinion letter on this was a game changer for people that still that knew about it. Huge. But now you still have other attorneys and accounting firms and dispensaries and manufacturers. They still don't know about it because you have to tell them. So I need to get out there.
Well, maybe this conversation definitely will help today. And so let's dive into a bit deeper, right? Not to get too much into the weeds, but tell us this methodology, tell us the stipulations in terms of the employee side. Like, how are they vested into this stock once they buy in? Is there term limits? Is there caps? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So bottom line is the employees have no money. Right. Let's just walk through slowly. Right. Back to private equity. Like, just so people understand, private equity is they want to get bought out by private equity. That's like the Shangri-La. Everyone thinks, oh, that's amazing, getting bought out. Well, here's the secret that nobody knows. When private equity buys you, they're not giving you the money. They're giving you very little of their own money. Let's take an example. Let's take a company, make very big numbers. Let's say the company is making $20 million a year in net income. And the value of that company is 20 million times 5, $100 million. Very easy, clean numbers. Well, when they want to buy a company that's worth $100 million, they don't give you $100 million. From their own fund, they give you $20 million. Okay. Then what they do is they borrow $60 million, 3 times your net income. They'll borrow $60 million from a bank like JP Morgan off of your cash flow. So if your cash flow is $20 million a year, they can borrow 60. So they get 20 from them. They get from themselves. They borrow 60 from JP Morgan. That's 80 million. The last 20 million is called an earnout. And that means as long as you reach those numbers that you told me that you're going to reach, then you're going to get paid. If you don't reach those numbers, you're not going to get paid. With an ESOP, it's the same thing, right? Except there is no equity. That's how the employees buy it. Now, there is no money from the employees. It costs the employees literally nothing. It's a complete gift from the IRS, and it's a gift from the owner. The way it works is this. Same company, $20 million in net income, $100 million. Were you going to say something?
No, keep going. Yeah.
Okay. So what they do is you go out and you borrow that same $60 million. Now, in the cannabis space, when I say borrow, there's no money to borrow. There's very, very little money out there. You can borrow money, but at rates at around 22%, which is kind of insane. But for sake of example, we're going to go through this. You go out and you borrow the same $60 million from a lender. That $60 million, the company borrows it, and that gets paid to the owner. So they only get $60 million. The other $40 million is what's called a seller note. That's an IOU from the company back to the owner. That's how they get that $100 million with an ESOP. All right. Now, here's something I didn't mention, which is another aspect of another cool thing about an ESOP. This is cool.
Keep it coming. Yeah.
Yeah. Normally, you sell your company, right? You sell your company, and anywhere in the country, you sell your company, you have to pay capital gains on that, right? That's another form of tax. You pay capital gains. So across the country, except for Texas and Florida, capital gains, state and federal, is about 30%. So if you sell your company for $100 million, you have to pay $30 million to the government in capital gains. Got to pay the $30 million bucks. Except when you sell to an ESOP, the government allows you to defer those capital gains, right? You can defer the capital gains when you sell to an ESOP, and you can structure, if you structure correctly, you can defer those capital gains forever. So that's another advantage, right? That again, people don't know.
How does that deferment happen? What are the requirements for that?
Here's the catch for that. They say, look, if you sell your company for $100 million to your employees, what you need to do is you need to take that $100 million and you need to reinvest that in stocks or bonds or some other type of asset. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, that means that I don't have to put $100 million in to actually buy. Let's say it's a bond. There are these bonds called floating rate notes. You can also buy real estate. All right, let's use real estate as an example. I have 1 year from the date of my sale to my employees. Let's say I sold today. Today's October 15th. I sell to the ESOP for $100 million. I have 12 months to reinvest that and buy $100 million worth of real estate. But when I buy the real estate, I don't have to put $100 million down. I can put down whatever the financing needs. And right now, the financing to buy real estate is about 20-25%. So if it's a $100 million property, I can put down $20 to $25 million. And then I buy the $100 million worth of property. So instead of paying $30 million in tax, I put the $20, $25 million down. I now have income producing real estate. And as long as I hold on to that real estate, I never pay capital gains tax, ever.
You basically don't have to put all the 100 million up front. You can just put that down payment in and then slowly finance, but you still qualify, is what you're saying.
Right. That's correct. Now, the reason why I went and I was explaining that whole complicated thing about how you would buy it, number one is it doesn't cost the employees anything. But number two, this is really interesting because even though you're selling the company today to your employees, you're going to get a chunk of warrants back in the future to buy back a piece of your company. To buy back a piece of your company.
That was going to be my next question is like, well, does the owner lose out, right? Like what if the company does really well?
Yeah, that's fantastic. They are not losing out. This is how it works. So remember I said in that example, it's $100 million, right? We had here in this example, we had $60 million in seller notes. No. We had $40 million in seller notes in the example. We got $40 million we borrowed. We borrowed $60 million from JP Morgan, and we have a $40 million seller note. That seller note, by definition, is more risky than that loan from JP Morgan. When JP Morgan lends you money, or any bank lends you money, they want senior position. What that means is if your company goes under, they're going to take it. They're going to take the keys and they take the company. That's called senior. The seller note is junior to them. I get what's remaining, but there's going to be nothing remaining most likely. So I'm going to get nothing. Right. So by definition, my seller note is more risky than JP Morgan's senior lending note, right? By definition, which means I deserve a higher interest rate for the bigger risk that I'm taking. Now, let's just say the market interest rate for that seller note is, let's just say it's 15%. Putting 15%, even in the cannabis world, it's still a lot of interest to put onto your company to pay me back 15%, right? It's a lot. Mm-hmm. So we say, look, let's say it's your company, Kevin. All right, Kevin, instead of paying 15% on that interest, instead of getting 15% every year, how about for that seller note, you're going to get 5%? Okay, well, I just told you deserve 15, and now I want to give you 5. So in lieu of that 10%, instead of that 10%, you're going to get warrants Okay. And you can get warrants to buy back a chunk of the company. You can get warrants anywhere from 10% of the company to 40%. And we can push and pull levers to get you from the 10 to 40%. Let's say you choose 40% warrants. Okay. So the warrants, to get the warrants, to initiate the warrants, right? There's a certain price to buy back the stock, right? There's always a price to it. So the warrants, the price, the predetermined price to buy back 40% of your company, for the $100 million company to buy back 40%, the predetermined price for that is about $15 million. So if you think about that, so for $15 million, the time frame is about 15, 20 years. Anytime in the next 15 to 20 years, whenever you're ready, you hand in those warrants, you hand in the check for $15 million, and you get back 40% of your company. Even if this is now 7 years down the road, federal legalization has occurred, Budweiser comes in to buy the company for $1 billion. Okay, great. The deal is done for the $1 billion. I hand in my warrants, write the check for $15 million, and they get back 40% of the company. The $1 billion comes in. I, as the warrant holder, get $400 million, and the employees get the other $600 million. The $400 million, and that's a second bite at the apple for me as the owner, right? Because remember, I sold the company today for $100 million. Now with these warrants down the road, I'm selling it again. So at that point, selling it again, that's where the employees can really benefit, especially in the cannabis space.
Gotcha.
In the normal world, you may not have a sale 6, 7 years down the road. In the cannabis space, everyone is really stoked to have that exit at federal legalization. Everyone is waiting for that. And that's why the ESOP structure is phenomenal for the owners, but for the employees, it is it could be life-changing or generational changing, depending on how much money they get at the federal legalization.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the employee benefits, because I mean, that's to wrap up the what, right? Tell me about the employee experience with ESOPs, right? So like salary, how do they invest? How do they vest these? You know,
yeah. So the way it works is this costs the employees nothing. This is something that's called non-discriminatory. So every employee is part of it automatically. And it's very simple how they get stock. It's all based on their salary. So if you make $100,000 a year and I make $50,000 a year, you're going to end up getting twice as much stock as I am. Very, very simple. Now, there is one group you can discriminate against, and those are union workers. You're allowed to give a union worker the choice. The choice is you can stay with the union, fantastic, great, but you can't be part of the ESOP, or you can choose to be part of the ESOP and not the union. You're allowed to give union workers that choice. So those are the only group that you can, that's called discrimination. You're allowed to do that. Now, there's probably not one union employee in the world that would ever choose the union over an ESOP, because it doesn't make sense. If you have the chance to become an owner, why would you want to be part of the union? So that choice, it's pretty easy for ESOP. But there are companies that say, look, you can be in the ESOP and be in the union. And then also once they do that, there's also issues there because, well, wait a second, I'm an owner now and I'm going to be a union against myself. So it's kind of weird.
Right.
Now, in terms of vesting, the way it works, normally, vesting means when can I take, when am I going to be getting the stock, or what percentage of the stock can I actually get?
When can you exercise the stock? Yeah.
Right. So, well, not exercise. When can I get? When can I? When can it be part of my portfolio? Which is different than when they can actually get it. It's two separate things. Okay. So you just start in the firm today. You join the firm. Well, you're not getting any stock today, right? What happens is every year stock is allocated to the employees every year, and stock allocation is over about a 25-year period. Stock is allocated. So if it's a 25-year period, that means that stock is going to be allocated at 4% a year across every year, 4%, 4%, 4%. But I start today, I'm not getting any allocation. I'm there for one full year. Great. I get an allocation of 4%. But that doesn't mean I'm vested. Vested is a different thing, because if I quit after 1 year, usually the vesting is about 20% a year for 5 years. So that means that if I'm there for 1 year, even though I'm allocated to 4% of the stock, I've only been vested 20%. So I only get 20% of the 4%.
Gotcha.
So if I'm there for 2 years, it's 40%, 60, 80,
60.
100%. Once I'm there for 5 years, I fully vest. So after 5 years, you have 5 times 4, there's 20% of the stock has been allocated, and now I'm fully vested. Now, if I leave now, and let's say I'm 30 years old, I leave, usually it'll be in the plan. What'll happen is the owners will not pay you out when you leave. They'll pay you out 5 years later. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to take 5 years time because you want this ESOP to start building. You want the company to be able to build up. So the government doesn't want to stress the company with everyone leaving. Plus, they want to disincentivize you to leave at 30 when they want you to stay until you retire, because the longer you stay, the more money you get. And if you stay until you retire at age, whatever, 62 or 65, then when you retire, you get all that money. And you don't actually get the stock. The way it works is you hand in the stock and get cash instead of the stock. And that's how you would get it. Unless the company gets sold. That's a different story. So in cannabis, if the company gets sold like in 2030 and I'm there, I automatically vest and I get the stock automatically. So if you sell it, what happens is all the money comes into everybody. Like that example that I just gave in before, I said Budweiser comes in for $1 billion, and the owners will get 400 million, the employees will get 600 million. So at that point, whatever employees are there, they're going to get their full allocation of stock.
I'm glad you clarified the 5-year kind of minimum to be vested, and then if you leave, you can still get that stock, but right they're decentivizing you because they want you to stay. Because from what I've heard you on other podcasts, I didn't know if like being with the company until you retire was a requirement, but you can.
It's not a retirement. It's not a requirement at all. It's just that you're incentivized to do it, and especially if the stock is doing well. If the company's doing well, you don't want to leave because you'll see your account start to ratchet up. Like, I don't know if you know this, but there's this company called Publix. Publix is a supermarket out west. It's one of the nation's largest grocery store chains.
Yeah.
And you walk in there and everyone is super friendly. They're the nicest people. You'll have these people at the cash register that are like, they're old and they don't look like much. They're super nice and super sweet, and they're millionaires.
Because
really
ESOP. Oh, shit.
That's right. They are multi-millionaires. It's insane. When you walk into a Publix and you see these people and they're so happy, yeah, they're happy because they are millionaires.
You know, I've talked to older folk and they're like, some of them have joked and said, hey, in my retirement, I want to have just an easy part-time job where I'm a Walmart greeter or whatever, right? But if you could work for a company and if you're there that long, you could essentially have that kind of work, right? Where it's not so strenuous and you're making money. Through the ESOP. That's great.
Yeah, that's great. And for the employee and for the employers, right? Once you explain this to the employees, it takes a while for them to get it, because a lot of times, just like when I was pitching it to cannabis firms, employers don't believe it. What do you mean I'm getting this for nothing? But once they start getting it, it takes about a year. They realize, yeah, this is very real. And now all of a sudden there's a shift in productivity where they become more productive. And in terms of retention, they're not quitting. Why would they quit?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, sorry to interject, but it's like it's almost perfect structure for the cannabis industry, because right now, as you pointed out, like until legalization happens or states continue to come online, it's really a hunker down situation where we're grinding it out. We're trying to survive, right, with the 280E hurdle. But going this route, it seems like it alleviate a lot of those issues and those challenges, and really help the company focus on what's important, which is producing a high quality product that's safe and effective, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, your cash flow doubles, even if 280E goes away, right? Let's say rescheduling occurs. Next year. And I'm all for it. Great. So now your effective tax rate, let's say you're making $2 million a year. Right now, if you're making $2 million a year in the cannabis space, well, you're paying about $1.2 million in tax. Right. If 280E goes away, all right, now you're paying $1 million in tax. So it's not like, 280E goes away and now it's all great. It says 280E is a real punch in the face, but taxes in general are a real punch in the face. Yeah,
California is at like what? I'm just going to say the wrong number, but it's like in the high 30s, like 38% or something like that, or maybe over 40%. It's crazy.
Oh, the effective tax rate?
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
see,
because you got
you're from Texas.
state.
You have no idea. Yeah, you have no clue how hard it. Okay, I'm in New York. I'm taxed at
Yeah.
about 51%.
Okay.
And
See,
same,
bring me to
yeah,
reality, man. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You're in like the special. You're in like another world over there. And and California is a completely separate universe, right? They're their own country, and that's a very high tax country, right? So you have the federal tax, which is crazy that you get taxed on, but then you have the federal tax, and you have the Social Security tax. There's just tax upon tax. So yeah,
Right.
in the cannabis industry in California, they're probably taxed at around, because of 280E, you're looking at, I don't know, for a dispensary, they could be at 65, 70%.
That is
So
insane. That is
it's insane.
insane.
It's
Yeah.
insane. Yeah. So California, this is like this is a game changer. I don't know if any Californians even know about this right now. I
Well,
haven't
hey,
pitched it to anybody in California.
we're gonna definitely blast this thing out once it goes live. But we're getting some good education here today, and I want to talk now. So we know the what, right? And now let's talk
Mhm.
about the impact. So tell me some real world examples of how this has financially transformed some cannabis, businesses through ESOPs.
Yeah. So in 2023, we have structured four cannabis companies that closed that are now fully 100% owned by the ESOP structure.
Can you say who they
And
are?
I can say, I think they're all out of the closet now. So we have Theory, which is
I've
a
had them on
large
before. Yeah.
yeah, they're a large MSO. Canna Provisions, which is in Massachusetts. There is the Vault, which is a dispensary chain, and we have East Coast Cannabis in up in Maine.
Okay.
And they're all doing super. They're doing super well. The employees are starting to understand what's going on, and these are all very smart people that did this. Because these are the leaders of the group, and that had to understand. So we had many meetings with them, and they were very, very focused. These groups are very, very focused on on employee welfare.
Yeah.
That was a big reason why they all did it. And the cash flow of paying no tax was secondary, but it was fairly huge. And yeah, it makes a big difference when you're doubling your cash flow. Doubling.
Right. I mean, and of course, right. And then, I mean, I don't know how soon like they have structured in an ESOP, but have you seen any data in terms of like you mentioned employee retention rates, job satisfaction, change in company culture, things like that?
Well, they're all beginning to change their company culture. They're getting it out. But no, I haven't seen any data yet on the firms. I've spoken to the founders. I've spoken to CFOs, and they're all extremely happy with it, and they're saying that the employees are happy with it. But at this point, it's still, for the employees, it's kind of new.
Got you, got you. Well, after we record here, I'll have to get the contact information for those organizations and maybe have them talk through how it's kind of maybe transformed or changed their operations, So that's
Yeah,
just
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. So tell me how cannabis companies can overcome ESOP adoption. We know that education is lacking,
Oh,
and we're trying to address that here today. But talk to me like why haven't more cannabis companies adopted ESOPs outside of like I guess
yeah,
knowing about it? Is
yeah.
that
That is the only thing. There's no. Well, okay. Let's see. Companies that I've spoken to about it, right now with 280E, there's a lot of companies that are in the middle of. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen with rescheduling. They're not sure what's going to happen with safer banking. So there's a lot of flux going on, and so they just don't want to deal now with an ESOP. And they understand that, yeah, their tax rate is still going to be high, but it's still so much change going on. I think that seems to be a big stickler in
yeah.
it. Like, well, let's just see what happens. And so I think rescheduling is going to happen next month. Oh, it's going to happen next month. It's going to happen next month. So
Well,
everyone is like, it's waiting.
But even if it passes, right? Like they still have to implement, and it's all incremental. It's going to take time. So, I mean, right?
Yes, it still takes time. It's still exactly. For those are for the companies that I have spoken to that do know about it. It's pretty much a waiting game. Some companies, the reason why they don't want to do it is their income is declining rapidly. So there are firms that are their revenues like this, and so they're like, I'm going to spend money on doing this, and I'll be out of business in a year. So there's a
Right.
lot of companies out there that are super struggling, and then there are firms out there that are they're just still on the fence of understanding what it is. So usually, if you come in through your attorney or you come in through your accounting firm, that's great because then I can explain it, and you have your accountant or your lawyer saying, "Yeah, this works." But
Mhm.
if I go in directly, and I was going in directly, that's difficult because you go directly in and speak to the founder. They're like, "This sounds way too good to be true. It can't be true. What's the catch?" There's literally like I spoke to the CFO. I mean, this is crazy. She had a fractional CFO business in New York, and she was young. She was still living in like her dorm room from when she got her like master's or something, and she literally did not believe it to the point where she got angry with me, and she's like, "This is a scam." And this is what she said. She's like, "If it's true," because I told her about in normal industries, again, you don't pay taxes. She's like, "Well, if that's true, why doesn't every company in the United States do that?" She's like, and I don't, it's not everywhere. And that was her argument. Like, look, people just don't know about it. It's not for everybody. But she got so angry, and she thought I was like being very, very unethical about this. She's like, "It can't be true. It's not
Yeah.
true." Click.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It seems like again, there's an awareness problem, and if more and more companies did find out, they probably would consider it. And at that point, if more did, then of course the government would revise the tax code, and we'd, you know what I mean. But for now, it seems like it's a real sweet spot, especially for the cannabis industry.
It's a huge sweet spot. And yeah, so this has been around since the 1970s, right? The whole ESOP structure of selling to your employees is beloved. It's beloved by both the right and the left. It's the only thing that Mitch McConnell and Bernie Sanders agree on, and same thing with Donald Trump and President Biden. They all agree on ESOPs, and ESOPs just keep getting better and better and better because it really does work.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it is beloved. So I don't think it's going away. But yes, if I all of a sudden was this unbelievable, amazing sales guy, and I could tell everybody in the country, and then you have millions of ESOPs, they would have to go away because then the country would go out of business.
Exactly, right? But hey, let's
I mean,
take
we
advantage
go out
of
of
the
business.
time now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one last question to wrap this up is just like the timing of, not to wrap the whole conversation. I have one more little segment I want to touch on, but the timing in which it takes, right? Like you don't have to go through all the details, but how long does it take for a company to restructure to become, structured in an ESOP?
Um, I would say in cannabis, because you're not only doing cannabis in ESOP, it's an M&A deal, a merger and acquisition, right? It's a big process to do it. So that takes time. And then you also have the licensing aspect. You have to figure that out. So I say you need to take at least 6 months. Give yourself 6 months. That's what I
Okay.
like. It could be less, but I like to say give yourself 6 months. And most of that 6 months is just in case something happens with the licensing. Case in point, one of our clients, no problem. This is in Massachusetts. It wasn't going to be an issue. Very easy. They had to do a name change, and very simple to do a name change. And there's a committee in their local town to do with a name change. They would do the name change on like December 20th, and they go to the meeting, and there's no meeting because someone had COVID. So they had to postpone it to like the December 29th. And then that was postponed. Like if it wasn't done by December 31st, they were screwed. And there was a lot of jumping around, a lot of craziness that happened, right? Because of those couple of days. It got through, But these are the things that you just don't know what can happen. And you know, in cannabis, it's just a very wild, weird.
Wild West.
Who knows?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen? So yeah. So I like to say, let's give ourselves 6 months.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I have one final topic to talk about, and that's the future of ESOPs in cannabis. So, if you had a magic wand, Darren, and you could just spread your vision for the future of ESOPs and how they'll evolve in the industry as it matures, tell us about that world.
Yeah, I think ESOPs are going to evolve where there's going to be a lot of roll-ups, a lot of mergers among smaller boutique cannabis companies. They're going to merge together under an ESOP umbrella and form large MSO conglomerates under this ESOP structure, where they'll be able to double their cash flow, and then they'll be able to get the synergies and economies of scale of a large company. I think that's going to be the future. I think the next couple of years, we're going to see a tremendous amount of ESOPs, regardless of 280E going away, which we all hope it does, or if it stays. It's just at the beginning right now, right? It's the beginning, and no one really knows about it. So as people get to know about it, out of all the people I've spoken to, there's nobody that's like, oh, that sucks. No, it's usually sounds too good to be true.
Exactly. So, it's kind of starts with like, it sounds too good to be true. You're a little skeptical, but then when you start looking into the history and you see, okay, yeah, this happened in the 1970s, right? It's something that is readily available to business owners, and it seems like kind of an untapped approach and resource.
Right. It's an untapped, it totally is. Now, we've structured over 400 ESOPs in the last 25 years, over $23 billion enterprise value. We know this space well. We've done it in every single industry. And now, we're really capturing the ESOP, the cannabis industry.
That's great. And I mean, that was kind of the last thing I wanted you to touch on is talk to me about MBO Ventures' role in the forefront and bringing ESOPs to the cannabis industry and your role as a thought leader.
Yeah, so I mean, we've done them all. There's not one ESOP that I haven't done. So we're advising on all of them so far, and I hope to do them all. To have that little niche. I like having that niche. As I said before, we are we're the one to do it. We've structured, like I said, over the past 25 years, over 400 ESOPs, and we've structured over, I guess, about $7 billion in ESOP debt. So we just know this space super well.
Proof's in the pudding.
The proof's in the pudding. We know what to do. Yeah, as a thought leader, I'm always on the forefront of this. I'm always reading up on it. I'm always coming up with clever ideas. I'm the one that came up with this idea. And as I start doing this with our clients and speaking to other attorneys, we have some other add-ons. I keep on thinking of more things, like that roll-up idea that we were just talking about. I've been pitching this roll-up to have other companies do it for a long time. I've been saying, look, you can do this, and I explain how they can do it. And we are now working to actually get this done, to do that roll-up in the ESOP world. Stay tuned.
Amazing. Darren, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on. I want to give you the opportunity to share your contact info so people can get a hold of you if they want to learn more, if they're interested in restructuring an ESOP. So do the plugs. Yes. All the plugs.
Yeah, here are the plugs. So I'm MBO Ventures, which is www.mboventures.com. I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Darren Gleeman. You can see it at the bottom there. You can find me, use ChatGPT or use Google, Darren Gleeman, MBO Ventures, or MBO Ventures ESOP. You will find me. And my phone number is 646-734-2035. You can call me or text me.
Awesome. We'll be sure to put that information in the description box for the YouTube video as well. And Darren, it was a pleasure. Like I said, thank you so much for the education and the insights, and look forward to following your progress, man. This is a really interesting space. I'd like to see how it evolves in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Kevin.
Yep. And thank you all for listening. Bye.
Cannabinoid Connect, the nation's most diverse cannabis-related podcast.